Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. Welcome to Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B Donnelly. I'm your host and producer, and welcome to episode 7, season 9. Feels like we've been away for a while, however I know that isn't so because last week we had our very special episode, which was the longest episode I've ever created at just over 3 hours and 20 minutes. And that was the audio companion to The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, which just celebrated the launch of its 4th issue with the theme Dublin Days, from city to shore and across the sea. That's why it feels like I've been away for ages, because I've been busy with 93 contributors, launching it in castles and living rooms, on Zoom and of course on the podcast. If you haven't heard about it, well then I don't know where you've been, because I haven't stopped posting about it, shouting about it, Xing about it, blue skying about it. So if you still need to purchase your copy, then you can head on over to the website eatthestorms.com, pick up your copy, or you can also pick up a copy at the Winding Stair Bookshop and Books Upstairs here in Dublin. But for now, we're back and I'm delighted. We have a fantastic episode lined up for you today, as we haven't had a regular episode in almost a month, as prior to our audio companion, our last episode was our Halloween special. So today we have a feast of poets for you, 9 in total. We are travelling around the globe, and I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be able to sit here surrounded by such incredible voices and share them with you on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, and now even on YouTube. And with that said, let's get right into today's episode. You know the drill by now, so grab yourself a coffee, a mug of tea, perhaps an entire decanter of wine, something savoury, something sweet, or perhaps just something wicked. My name is Damien B Donnelly. This is Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast, and I hope you enjoy the show. And I am delighted to welcome my first guest onto the podcast today, a guest who joined me originally for the Broken Spine Arts special episode last season. And I am so delighted that she has come back to join us today to share poems from her second chapbook called And I Will Make of You a Vowel Sound, which won the Aramati Poetry Pamphlet Prize and was described by the T.S. Eliot Prize-winning poet Joelle Taylor as delicate and furious, a haunting act of worship, of rebellion. No stranger to Dublin, she was a poet in residence at the Creative Brain Week 2024 here at Trinity College. She was the poet in residence for the 2024 Birnam Book Festival and the 2023 Makar for the Federation of Writers in Scotland. She is currently working on the Canmore Suicide Prevention Trust and the National Trust for Scotland, and has had several pieces commissioned by the Scottish Poetry Library, and you're about to see why. This is a wonderful Morag Anderson.
What a joy to be reading on my favourite poetry podcast, Eat the Storms. Thank you, Damien, for having me. My poetry observes the power and vulnerability, the desires and abuses of life lived in the female body. Joelle Taylor describes my new chapbook as delicate and furious, an act of rebellion. I hope you agree. I spent my early years in a Glasgow tenement. My mum sent my sister and I to what we thought was the Yellow Cushion Club. It turned out to be the Elocution Club. We didn't last long. A girl like me. She's throwing bricks, splintering the door of the lad who calls her pape, slag, bitch. She wears anger like blood, a constant throb beneath the surface, seeping through second-hand clothes, slack as grey bandages. She joins the Yellow Cushion Club, heard it will help her talk proper. Doesn't yet know she'll be met with laughter from the sickle-tongued teacher. I tell her to rise early, Look directly at the grapefruit sun, declare it no longer bitter. Elocute or execute with pencil on paper. My teenage years were spent in a coal town. It was the 1980s. It was an ugly time. It was an ugly town. Mandy at number 9. Dry-mouthed from want of milk, she learns to fear her mother's breast, masters the art of watchfulness through a deadlocked pupil. Hobbled by birth's random hammer, she shift shapes unseen, a cloud moving through rooms cold enough to snap childhood bones. In class, Miss Vale swipes lice from her hairline, teaches her to wash her glass eye, sneaks a clean skirt from lost and found. Mr. Gall at number 6 gifts size 5 boots. She kicks a burst ball on concrete streets, 12 metal studs dulled to nubs. She ferrets bottles from the bin outside William Hill's, trades them at DeLuca's van for 2 scoops in a single cone. Thursday, she closes the door to the welfare officer. Her mum grips the handle of her mug like a knuckle duster. My mum once stole food from the meat processing factory she worked in to feed my siblings and I. She, of course, went without. There is a direct correlation between poverty and early mortality. My mum died young. The shoplifter. Flaccid light and piss reek seep in from the communal hall. It takes both cold hands to form a grip, turn the key, unlock the door. The kids, still asleep in a pleat of thin limbs under sheets and coats and a lanced heart nailed to the wall. I take the pack of sausages from the waistband of my skirt, bend carefully to pick apart damp knots in oversized boots, but still dislodge the bloodied wad of my makeshift sanitary pad. I slide down the wall, pull my knees to the ladder of my ribs, and bleed. Portraits of my father with a saw. The new baby, powder blue, curtains pulled, hearth doused, the house cold till the boxes cut and a small grave dug. Milk insists through cotton. Mother scrapes the grate with a buckled spoon, smears steadfast pain with a blackened goose wing, a plume of ash with each dry sob. All the lockjaw night, Dad saws sorrow into short planks, hands raw from sanding. 12 nails seal the lid, another buried in his boot, lest he should find comfort. Loss, a thorn that cannot be drawn by clenched teeth or the heat of a daughter's need. With each pregnancy, whether it results in a live birth or not, fetal cells remain in the mother's bone marrow and are thought to migrate, even decades later, to sites of injury. Migration. Long after my shelter body shucks her reluctant skull from my shell, her fetal cells, rose foamed in my core, migrate to mend my flensed heart. Drawn to salt tides and moon-dipped pools, she bends east with scatterlight, forgets to look west where night falls last. Distance turns everything blue. I peel a pearldom of song from my mother tongue, seal it in bottle glass, send it on the carrying stream. She grasps freedom, swims her own rhythm. I name the space between us broken water. Claim it, beautiful daughter. My family home is on the island of Barra in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, where the wind whistles constantly. It is said to be our ancestors calling us home. This last poem ends my chapbook and gifts the chapbook its title. It has an epigraph by W.S. Graham. Bear these words in mind as they bear me soundly beyond my reach. Though I fade like sailors' footprints, do not moulder under grief's woolen blanket. When the ocean knocks at your wind-scraped door, rise to greet me, the first Atlantic bite. When Simmerdim's lamp is trimmed bright and clear, find me trailing west, the last knuckle of light. When words freight your untilled tongue, sit by a rogue of stones at Scurrival and sing. In the bitter-sweet lull between 2 days, open your mouth to salted air, and I will make of you a vowel sound.
And now from Scotland, we're moving back to Ireland for an Australian poet of Irish origins who now lives in Dublin. And so far, I've seen him read in a 13th century royal chapel and an 18th century castle, as he has twice been a contributor to the Storms Journal. And I was also recently at the launch of his latest collection, The Colour of Extinction, which was just published by Reynard Press. Today, he's going to share poems from that collection. He has had work in over 100 magazines spread across 10 countries, and another collection coming next year called An Ocean of Hope from Drowningfield Press. I'm delighted to welcome back to Eat the Storms S.C. Flynn.
My collection, The Colour of Extinction, is on the theme of nature and climate change. There are 4 sections, so I'm going to read the first poem from each section to give an idea of the collection's structure. The first section is entitled The Cruel Blank Edge and introduces the theme of climate change. The first poem is entitled Inheritance. Under a sky the colour of extinction, you choose your own conclusion. The earth might have already done so. Somewhere in its whirling mass of DNA and infinite genetic possibilities is the clue to what will replace us. Perhaps an existing creature will evolve, switching on latent capabilities that have lain dormant for millennia. Or the distant descendants of extremophiles currently clustered around hypothermal vents and suspended from the roofs of caves will develop in unimaginable ways. But then again, maybe once is enough, and the world will embrace equality, with no striding master or dictator, and 10,000 years of civilization will shrink to an unrepeated moment. The second section is entitled Feathered Neurons and is about birds, particularly birds who are trying to survive by adapting to climate change and loss of environment due to human intervention. Where I live in the Docklands of Dublin, there are gulls on every roof. It's a gigantic gull colony, and we've really got to know them very well. And so this poem is dedicated to the gulls of central Dublin. Just like other animals, when you see them every day, you get to know their personalities and realise that they're not all the same. So for the gulls, this is entitled Dinosaurs on the Roof. Some refugees have wings and live in our world because we took theirs from them. The ancients learnt much from birds, and so have I these years. Determination and adaptability, fighting for what is important to you, and letting the world hear you state your case. I will forever remember them all. Connor the bold, foster son and familiar, Neve the shrillest, and O'Shin the hoarsest, Finbar the clown, who I've known from the egg, Saoirse, wearing her leg ring like a model, Lorcan the explorer, who returns each spring, companions in the struggle of life, sharing the great nest of our city. The third section is about Australia, and it's entitled Ancient Dust. The first poem is based on a phenomenon in Australia that I remember very well growing up there, but which has become more and more prevalent around the world, which is the bushfire, and climate change is driving these to be more severe and last longer, and possibly appear in places and at times when they normally never did before. Some plants in Australia have evolved to require the extreme heat of the bushfire in order to germinate. So the first poem of this section is After the Bushfire. The smouldering night has exhausted itself, and sunrise bleeds away the bruises, slipping a red gold mask over the landscape, eyes half shut against the drifting ash. Burnt trees stand in piles of cinders that will soon be cold and dense as omens. Syllables of a scattered alphabet asking questions of their ragged shadows. Underneath the forest's puzzled face and the ground's grey bankruptcy lie seeds that have waited years for this, as if to say, let me breathe again, give me back the sky. The fourth and final section is about Antarctica, and it's entitled Dry Gods Melting. I've always been very intrigued by the fact that tens of millions of years ago, Australia and Antarctica were united in a giant continent called Gondwana. But since then, of course, they followed very different destinies, with Australia drifting ever northwards and becoming hotter, as it still is apparently, while Antarctica, of course, had become frozen. One result of that is that Antarctica is the only continent without a native human population, and therefore without a mythology or a human history. So I wrote a mini epic to try and give a voice to this continent that never had one in that sense. Antarctic Voices. Sometimes when the wind here talks, it tells me things that science will never say. How long ago, by different stars, the gods of night and day agreed to split the year between them. That jutting rocks above the snow are the eggs of enormous stone birds. And every iceberg is a wayward child running away from home. How the sky god bled the world of colour to make the southern lights. That rolling balls of snow are tossed around by baby giants, while their parents' snores from underground pile up stacks of frozen steam. And that the penguins march away each year to seek the trick of flight. And how much more the cold would tell me if I could catch its icy tongue. Thank you.
We are staying in Ireland now for a first-timer to Eat the Storms, who's currently working on her debut poetry collection. Her poems reflect her internal and external landscapes and help her make sense of the world. A recipient of mentorship and retreat bursaries through the Kerry Arts Council, she's enjoyed seeing her poems published in places like the Galway Review, Drawn to the Light Press, Skylight 47, and I'm delighted to welcome her now to Eat the Storms for the first time. This is Melanie Joy.
Hello, and thank you, Damien, for having me on this podcast. As a new and practicing poet, these kinds of opportunities are so important, so thank you. And the poems I've chosen to read are about the importance of mentorship, the people that paved the way for these unconventional creative paths that don't seem to fit into a failing capitalist world. So the first short poem is called Crackles, the call of creative, whose coloured lichen crackles across stone and skin to where things begin. This next poem is for a wonderful English teacher I had in primary school. It's called Crown. Mrs. King was kind to me. She saw something where others only saw trouble. She fought my corner, started a school prize for creative writing just for me. Thank you kindly, Mrs. King. You lit a match in me. You deserve a crown of your very own. I was very fortunate last year to receive mentorship with the wonderful Moya Holmes through Kerry Arts Council. The Arts Councils in Ireland really are a brilliant support, and her mentorship was everything. I would not be calling myself a poet without her mentorship. This poem is called A Rush. Her feedback courses through my veins, rivulets of welcome spring rain. A rush of river breaking its banks, the gush of that waterfall word, publishable. And since writing that poem and being given that encouragement, I have gone on to have several of my poems published, but I wouldn't have had the confidence to write them, let alone share them, without that mentorship. So thank you, Moya. This was a poem I wrote when our mentorship came to its end, its natural end. Corach, I launch my corach, alone now on a stream of tears, upon your wisdom, born of an ancient poet's mystic years. Be the waters choppy, or be they calm, I will carry you, my joyful captain, in my rowing arms. And I suppose the first and most important mentor and friend I had was Pauline Buick, who sadly died coming up to 2 years ago now. But I spent a lot of time with her as a child and as a friend and as her artist assistant. And that had a profound influence on me, and I miss her every day. This poem is called Pauline Painting, in loving memory of Pauline Buick. Textured paper's grain awaits, propped up on workman's bench, leaning against the bolts and screws of easel's wooden frame. The scratch and scrape of excavation tool begins, rooted in man's instinct to create, to carve out his patch and grow. Once the pencil's map and graft is done, paintbrush tinkles against glass, announcing the feminine speech of stretching colour that evolves from magic wand and her barely flicking wrist, that sweeps and curves the fluid lines of her imagination, rolling out female form with animal pelt and lust. Watercolours brush their feather strokes, pluming the page in otherworldly movement. Nature, woman, animal, entwined, come to life on the page. I, again thanks to Kerry Arts Council, will be going on my second retreat coming up in July, and I went to the Half Door Writers Retreat on Loch Derg, which I highly recommend, with Pippa, and just giving yourself that time is so important for the creative writing process, but I think just for the human experience, having time to yourself. Golden locket, a golden locket of solitude. I cherish it, hold it close, let it envelop me. I am a love letter folded inside. And this last poem was a poem I wrote going on this 3-night retreat away from my 3 young boys to Loch Derg. Swan Song. The road began to bend into old stone wall, an arching clematis emerging pink from twisted twig, brimming banks of ferns and daisies, down to Loch Derg, where headland and islet shone like a witch's iris, gleaming green and purple. Lake ribboned silver beckoned, a lighthouse calling. The grass underfoot just dewing, lush and lithe. Stones sleeked in moss, the welcome salve of silt. A lake swim returns me to wind, water, stone. Arms as wings turn me into a child of Lear. A scarf of light sweeps across the mountain's shoulder. What needs to be written will be written, written on the wind.
We are off to the United States of America now for another returning guest who I'm so pleased to say is returning to share work from their new chapbook. They are a mixed-race queer poet, writer and artist with publications in the Michigan Quarterly, Cincinnati Review, Sage Cigarettes, Spoon River Poetry Review, Midway Journal, San Pedro River Review, and I'm delighted to say that their artwork appeared in the inaugural issue of the Storms Journal. In 2021, they won the Virgil Flump Humour Poetry Contest, and they will soon have work appearing in places like Get Bent, Fallen, Thin Places and Sacred Spaces, and Beyond the Frame. Reading from that new pamphlet out just last month, Dancing Back Through Pluperfect, this is Koss.
Hello everybody, my name is Klaus, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Damien Donnelly, for the invitation. I'll be reading from my chapbook, Dancing Backwards Towards Pluperfect, out in October 24 from Diode Editions. Dancing Backwards Towards Pluperfect. You wish to be young again, so you buy an Aurora Frankenstein kit, sniff the lemony glue and paint it with enamel, half-assed, display it on your bedroom shelf, homage to a stranger child. You wish to be young again, so you wrap yourself in lame and a boa and dance around the folding chairs, drunk and thumping, like nobody ever told you you dance like an asshole. You wish to be young again, so you join a gym and spin to deafening rock till you puke and the fat rolls off your frame like a yarn tongue, and you parade your small-town renewed gay ass to no one. You wish to be young again. Life just slides away down the strip mall ramp. Recreation. Discharged 2 weeks early, less than 9 months of scrunched up you. Wrinkled pink ball wriggled, then popped bloody, screaming and ready for fight or flight. With your ruffled stump wings, smashed arm and crumpled shoulder, gnashing in birth's trauma, where mother-god connection snapped closed, and you're left alone in your existential freedom. So Mount Kafka's cockroach, Gregor, and Gallop happy, butt slung in black cowhide chaps, yeehawing queerity across the embarrassing town you were born in. Howl. Howl never embraced you, baby, but that's the beauty of it all. Dinner at the Brady's. The Brady bunch are carnivorous. I know because I often crawl into the TV set and have dinner with them. Sometimes they invite my sister too. Tiger, their dog, is also carnivorous, and so is Alice, their cook. My mom and dad are vegetarian. They are orange vegetarian parents, and even our dog is vegetarian orange, and somewhat shriveled. We grow vegetables in the backyard and some other things too. After dinner, Mom and Dad smoke ganja and are mellow for the evening. Sometimes when we have vegetable medley casserole with almonds again, my sister and I take our plates into the living room and sit in front of the TV waiting for Alice to give us the signal. When she finally notices us, we leave our vegetable plates behind and sit down on 2 brown folding chairs with the Bradys, ripping pork chops from their bones, gnawing on the fat. We ask for raw hamburger for dessert, and sometimes we get it. Flint girl handcuffed along Dort Highway. Who might have seen the young girl, handcuffed to the candy-striped swing set, scissored legs frog bent backwards, wasting the overgrown grass, framed by the tapered picket, white and keen as blades. Along the Dort that sunny spring day, drivers raced over asphalt, minding their business. The clouds shifted the cyan sky as time passed in child decrements. In the lull and ache of the day, the teenager who did it, was he playing? She questioned the act without anger, with an open sense of wonder. He taught her how to meditate that day. Those hours and minutes, sitting still, waiting. TV. Watching the TV, it seems as though everything is about the same distance from me, and consequently that everything has equal value. A tube of crust falling through an ethereal sky has about the same impact as the latest plane crash on the 6 o'clock news. There they are, neatly contained in the little box behind glass. One appears right after the other. The sameness may be enhanced by black and white, which I happen to have, and the black and white can render an otherwise threatening event quite harmless, since I know the real tangible world in which I live is multicolored. Usually. Sitting in my armchair, I am safe from the TV, its explosions, its propaganda, and its subliminal messages. And it is safe from my occasional verbal interjections and other less overt responses, which occur infrequently. The perfect equilibrium attained through my static vantage point from the armchair allows me to transcend all horror and experience television images aesthetically. This equilibrium is disrupted, however, if I move my chair in relation to the TV or switch the stations. It's during these moments of chair scooting and channel changing that art is conceived. This is a list poem, and I'm going to not read the numbers. It's called Love Song for a Friend, Kim. Lit up each time you flashed your heart-shaped mouth and skein of largest teeth. Your skin was so creamy, and your boyish jaw curved like another smile or echo. Tried to understand your streaming red and yellow environmental fabric art the university grounds crew ripped from the trees. Impressed you made $10 an hour delivering pizza from your Honda. That was a lot of money then. Didn't stare at your mangled arm eaten by the misplaced mailbox, but I wanted to and always imagined how it must have hurt. Listened with eagerness and still share your stories. Vermont, your rustic lesbian moms, the commune school where you all streaked on Parents' Day. You were so different from me. Loved your tangled black hair that looked so weird on occasion when you combed it. Didn't have sex with you when you were trashed and felt me up at the party. You were with the coke dealer then who told everyone he was hung. Didn't have sex with you when your roommates instigated an orgy. You drove me home. Didn't have sex with you when you dropped your clothes to the cement and dove into the pool after we broke into the Arbor Hills Club. Didn't have sex with you when I held you and you were so drunk your eyes closed as you stroked my cheek. We fell asleep, you in my arms. I was waiting for the right sober moment, and then all the moments passed. But do know this was with respect and with the deepest regret. What I'd do to you if you were still here. Repository. Grandma, I haunt your home. Years later, the lavender in your drawer sings ghost. How can you be so still? And how can the grass be grass above you, just down the road from here? Your silver hair encased in silvered blue. I shadow in your frigid chair, and my nails have ridges just like yours, and my hair now shivers silver, and someday too the grass will be grass above me.
We are heading now to England, to Yorkshire to be precise, for the author of 2 books by Stairwell Books of York, Awakening and Iconic Tattoo. He has been published in anthologies, magazines and books worldwide, including 3 times in the Anthologies for World Peace. His poem 12 Hours was read at the battlefield of Belwardee, exactly 100 years after the first shot was fired, and he was involved in the team that created the play Haunt, about historic homelessness and bedsitter poverty. His work ranges from political and angry to children's poems, comedy, disability, discrimination and depression. I'm delighted to welcome another first-timer to Eat the Storms. This is Richard Harries.
I'm Richard Harries and I've got various poems to read to you today. The first one was a challenge, Fiddler's Green. And Fiddler's Green is a mythical place where drowned mariners go to spend their afterlife, and it's been used in short stories, poems and plays for centuries. The wind blew. The sea was no longer blue or green, but grey and black, dark as hell. The waves cracked over the ship. We fought, struggled, tried desperately to survive. In vain. We capsized. I swam in the swirling madness, pulling me under. The ship went down. This was my end. I waited for my life to flash in front of me. It didn't. I drowned. A blackness, nothing at all, until I heard the music, a fiddler playing fast, a dancing jig. I felt joy and saw lightness. Fiddler's Green existed, and I was there. Differences, written after a workshop run by Jim Hygo, a great poet in Hull, and we were discussing metaphors and similes. The beard was long, so long, white and grisly, hanging firm and 6 inches down from the chin. It separated and hung down in 2 parts, making the old man's visage seem long, so long, his face so old. He lay asleep on the grass bank, and a bird, a wren, landed. It pecked at the wiry hair, then discontented flapped its wings and tried to fly away, but to its distress could not take off. Its tiny talon feet caught fast in the mishmash of the hair. The rock was covered in seaweed, tangled and messy, many varieties, some long, some bulbous, all slippery, wet and slimy. Onto it crawled the crab, small and hungry, looking for nibbles to eat. It found some food and was happy. Eating contented him. He no longer had to hunt. He just let the water lap over his shell and rested, occasionally moving slowly. Then a wave lapped over and he was covered with long weed that tangled and trapped him. Neither could move, neither were free, neither had choice, neither were without fear. Endings can vary, they differ and are not fair. Perhaps it is fate, perhaps it is chance. These are 2 different stories with 2 different ends. The old man stirred, not yet awake, felt something instinctively attached to his beard. He brushed it fiercely with his strong left hand. He crushed the tiny wren who died in a second. The crabbit struggled and was getting weak, losing hope and about to give up when a wave came a-crashing and swept it away, letting it float to freedom and to live another day, a predator itself. These tales of entrapment had such different ends. We never know the future, and we never know our end. So do remember to enjoy every day, for something with the texture of that beard may enter your life, or you may find yourself with a metaphorical rock. Whichever is yours or mine, make sure your last moments count. The birthday card, and I'd been to another workshop. This was a loving and tenderness workshop. Not my usual sort of thing at all, really. I have saved a birthday card, just one. It's an ordinary birthday card in a red envelope. I take it out and look at it every now and then. It moves me, touches my heart. It's from Laura and Bill. I work for an advice centre, love my job very much, the best I ever had. So elderly clients, mostly living in poverty. Laura and Bill were ill. I applied for attendance allowance for both. Before a decision came, her water tank leaked, causing lots of damage. The council would do nothing, no compensation, just a repair, till she referred the matter to me. An apology and a reasonable sum were paid to her. She was very grateful, needed to be believed and taken seriously. The application for attendance allowance took 12 months to get it awarded, and we got it for both. This triggered some support, lifted them out of poverty, but in turn this triggered council tax benefit and housing benefit as well. The lot, backdated 12 months, £7,000 put in their bank account. Laura and Bill's final years were changed. She went into John Lewis department store and bought their most expensive bed. My final one will be the best, she said. She bought, at 80, her first computer and learned how to use it. Grandkids and great-grandkids all over the world did not write, visit or phone. But once she had mastered email, she contacted every one of them a lot. If this was now, she would have had a ball with Skype. She kept saying, since I came into my money thanks to you. And she sent me a card, a birthday card, to Richard, my Lionheart. I have it still, and seeing it warms my heart. In his honour. As a child, I knew my aunts and uncles, also my dad's cousins, my second cousins, but called by me auntie and uncle. I was born in 1952, soon after the war. Mum and Dad had both gone to war, and most of the men in the family had too. We were fairly lucky, it seemed, and there were groups of 10 and 12 siblings on the family tree. Then recently I heard of one who died tragically. He had drowned at Scapa Flow, a nephew of my beloved granny, a death that will have devastated her. William Moore. Granny had been born a Moore too. A chief petty officer in the Navy right at the start of the war, Friday the 13th, October 1939. The HMS Royal Oak was torpedoed. 833 men died, drowned at sea. I'd never heard of William. His cousins had never mentioned him, nor had my granny, who did speak of the war to me. But I found I was moved and upset by his end. Upset that it had not been a legend in the family, an ignored or forgotten member. Maybe those close to him wanted to forget the pain, to ease the trauma, to be glad that they survived, or maybe they felt guilty that they had lived. But I want to remember him, to be honest, to claim him. I also hope that as he set out to fight fascism and laid down his life, it was not in vain, and that right-wing extremists do not thrive, having gained power by their back door, causing democracies to be in a coma or to die. Bless and thank you, William Moore, R.I.P. and then a short one. Being myself. We build a wall around us. It's strange, isn't it? Put on a front, we keep them, our secrets, under our hats, sweep them under the carpet and cover them up. Our inner souls and selves don't always see the light of day. Our inner child, still alive, is kept well hidden deliberately to shield ourselves. Feelings and emotions are not displayed, worn on our sleeves. It's for protection and survival, but it can be stifling. I want to, I will do, be me. I will break free. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have a poet who splits her time between living in County Down and County Leitrim and started writing just 6 years ago, although I think when you hear her work today, you won't believe that. Her poetry is often about observing the natural world, referencing experiences of grief, loss and transcendence. With over 26 poems published through Tribes Press in Galway, she also combines word and visual art with photography on her Instagram account, which you can find the details of in today's blog post. Again, for the first time beneath the storms, this is Cathy Briel.
This is called Murmuration. Rippling reeds on water's edge, shading the settling sun. A dark spirit, a black spell, flocks and floods the lowering sky, surging a sea of long grass and wind-bent trees. The flight of birds mirrored in the cold lake water. The hiss of black wings crashes like waves on sand, and the very air I breathe tumbles around me. The flock shifts shape, rolling, recoiling as a hawk rends the air in focused flight. But as light fades with unseen signal, starlings drop into rush and sedge. The roost is safe, warm, quieter now, the murmuring done, and I am left bound in clay, mud-stuck, flightless, forever looking skyward. Sequoia. There's a sequoia growing in my house, in a small pot beside the window, all feathery green. It will need 100 years to grow and break the thick walls, push through the roof to disturb a roost of bats and let the weather in. If I sit quietly, I could watch a kingdom grow in those branches, birds nesting in lofty spaces, weeds flowering in the woody folds and crannies as the water of life flows through mighty veins. I will hear the creak and groan, the stretch of 1,000 years, his giant heart beating slowly through time to come, a great drum echoing when all else is silent, empires spent. While fires rage, seeds fall, and deep snow lays the land to sleep, life will turn over, stirring in the darkness. Michael. Michael has my soul. He holds it in his hand. It was given up after a long struggle, a lifetime fought with anger, despair, a stamped foot and paper sword, and most sincere protestation. He stood grave and calm, waiting for surrender. For mirrors crack, reflections shatter in the pool of a human life. Yet looking up from my distraction, I saw there was no fight, just someone waiting in light, a fisher of souls with net of stars, gathering men to ask the final question, the answer deciding eternity. Now I wait at the river, my turn for passage to the shimmering shore. No more feet of clay or Adam's rib to cage my soul. A feather's touch, the guiding hand of my oldest friend. A last bestowal, and I am set adrift. The running fox. The big bay carried a small lady, a rangy horse, seasoned he could cover ground with a fleet turn of foot. His well-shod rider emptied a stirrup cup as old men, glad of company, quietly praised her lowered heels and secure seat, a needed asset for a long day on a restless mount. A pack of joyful hounds, anxious to be off, rid of the social niceties, jigged and reeled at the huntsman's feet. Tails up, flagging the urge to run, baying, the sound swelling in the cold air, and rolling down the hill towards a large dog fox, curled and resting in long grass. He too was fleet of foot. Through drains, ditches, and barbed wire fences, gaps in the grey stone walls and seas of rushes, he ran, heart racing, breathing hard. I saw him jump the broken fence into the woods, disappearing into shadows thick with briar and the grey ghosts of dead ash. Their arms reaching, skyward pleading. The dogs came after, pealing jubilation, horse and rider feeling trepidation as the forest closed around them, and their clamour faded in the soft, quiet dark, to be heard no more. Standing at the window, I saw my fox, ambling past, muddy-pawed and spittle-flecked, tired but without fear. I caught his amber eye, and to this day I will say I saw a secret vulpine smile. The barman. He's there most days, big arms, big heart open, a bear hug crush of a man with a handshake to match, a bit of a showman. Johnny Cash singing rebel songs, his politics the old religion, a sea swimmer, year round for the cold Atlantic heals the soul. They seek his counsel and quiet advice over the black stuff. The 2:30 at Lingfield or the ailing neighbour. He's the undertaker, burying the dead and his own private grief, a shadowed face when no one sees. We sit at the hearth, the turf fire smoking, eyes smarting, watching men in their cups and strong conversation, told to mind their P's and Q's. There's ladies here, he says. Apologies are made, accepted, and for now all is good and right with the world. The sun is shining. Light floods the open door, chasing shadows across the stone floor. The turf catches fire as Johnny Cash takes down his guitar and sings of hope and glory. On Benwee Head. Walking the bog on Benwee Head, giving the nod to hikers we'd seen on other treks, all of us searching for peace or revelation. Woolly hats, muddy boots, jumpers tied round neck and waist, a gull feather behind an ear, eyes seeking anything other than sheep. The soft crunch of heather and bleached tussock in autumn colours, rust and dun. White feathers snagged on bog cotton surrendered to Atlantic gales. Bright mosses in the hollows, small peaks of turf bent and twisted, dried and gnarled by salted winds, the black ground worked hard. But in one spot, beside the stacks, white calla lilies, strangers on the bog, like us seeking wilderness, escape from an urban garden in the tyranny of plastic gnomes, the pity of half-dead roses and vague shrubbery, the neighbour's dog and shaved grass. Blessed are the uprooted, who wander in sacred spaces with larks ascending.
Now, it's been a while since my next guest first joined us on Eat the Storms, but I'm delighted to say they're making a fantastic return to celebrate the launch of their poetry collection called Echoes of a Caravan Library. They are a non-binary, autistic writer living in Cornwall in England, and their poems depict daily life as an autistic queer person, exploring themes of grief and the general annoyance for the world. Reading from Echoes of a Caravan Library, I'm delighted to welcome back the always fascinating Klaus Funnell.
Hello, this is Klaus Funnell, and I feel very honoured to be on the Eat the Storms podcast. I'm going to read you a couple of poems today from my book, which is titled Echoes of a Caravan Library, Poems and Other Works of Autism, Nomadic Living and Death. I hope you enjoy the poems, and if you would like to find the book, it can be found on Amazon and Waterstones. Thank you kindly. This first poem is titled Barbaric Futures, and it is about hereditary illness and not having the knowledge of your ancestors to gain valuable information that could help your health. So here we go. Thank you. This is your fate, though it could be mine. A few decades will be the teller of that story. The reference of a past tale is obsolete. It is left as an enigmatic problem. No one can propose a conviction. Her health declines as the disease develops. There is no divine in this predicament, nothing just or accountable. If only illness idled along as it expired. Thank goodness she was non-compliant, a brazen dam who demands a fight. She won't go quietly, you know. Would knowledge make her brawl disused? Would she simply lie down and let these microscopic menaces govern her essence and hold her for ransom? Perhaps the cryptic nature of this barbarian leaves a space for belief. The coin can land either way, depending on its fall. If only your producer propelled some answers, an illuminating explanation on the subject of your masculine predecessor. Although you could never rely on the one who bore you, you never could. She made you age in a way that no child should. If only her mother were here, her stern tongue would convey some clarity. She was strong, untouchable, invincible, we thought, fierce in her approach, just like you. Grappled to the end, no one dared to doubt her. Due to die with a creeping deadline, one she frequently defied. I implore you to stay, joust this jeopardizing future. I can't bear to lose you. How strange I should turn to discover you. Someone seemingly inconceivable. I want to know you, to recognize all that was thrown upon you. If the future was tangible, what would you dream? Please remain and unravel. Stroke my head and reassure me with the comfort only a creator can. Thank you. This second poem is a poem that I wrote in honour of my dear friend, who would frequently tell me the stories of his youth and frequently tell me stories about his wife, who he would walk a very long walk every day to go visit her. I wrote this poem in honour of this dear friend of mine and love him very dearly. We love you, Bill. Okay, this poem's titled 1976. And just like that, from one world to the next, she slipped, just like his mind did, back to 76, 1976 to be exact. The year of sailing ships and meeting the rich, when wars were still to be won individually and not just one huge global catastrophe. Things were easier back then, for him at least. Days like today are nothing to the past. He lives there, in pursuit of his prime. Oh, what a breeze to be young. Days of cocktail parties and cold nights on the bridge. Sirs in suits, women in fur coats, sipping red wine with dinner. Once the clock struck 12, they'd be on to the spirits. Sleep was scarce, somewhat similar to his existence now. The clock won't shackle him, nor could it ever. The opening hours of the city won't sit him. Those legs are never still. He'll stroll down country lanes, ready to break into dawn-filled sky alongside the birds. resilient and strong, physique of a 20-something man, blue eyes that could match the colour of an untouched ocean, a golden heart for which belonged to her. He never spoke of that fracture that lived tucked in between the crevices. He made sure to visit her every day, so she never forgot how precious she was to him. Thank you. This poem, the third poem, is quite fitting for the time of year because we're going into winter, and I wrote this poem deep in the depths of winter, and it's titled Words from a Caravan. Even the spiders have given up here, a victim to the ever-growing black mould in the corner. The fridge gave away months ago, only leaving its toxic gas to swallow the air. The walls have warped in winter's decay, and the windows unsealed like a worn-out jacket with a faulty zip. The outside no longer stays beyond the borders. It creeps in, slowly, subtly, until a storm slaps you in the face whilst you smoke yourself to sleep. The speakers are cutting out, sounding like a stutter. The cupboards unhinged, refusing to show you what is inside of them. On the other hand, the windows have gained a crowd of moss. No, you cannot see the outside anymore. It isn't for you to see. The books, shelved in literary manner, are insisting separation. They have sweated themselves to sodden and require solitude from their subjects. The rats evicted themselves months ago. No notice was needed, left on their own accord. The vegetables wilted with the cold. Their ally, the fruit, kept each other warm in their bowl, but comfort eventually strays the stuffiness, and now the only thing that grows between them is mould. The burner's armour is holy, leaving his structure weak and feeble. His favour fades swiftly to seeded embers. Rust is his fate, from past fires of wet wood. At least we are gifted with mostly dry socks from his fight. Winter and its cruelties will soon diminish, and spring will have submerged before we know it, in hope of a new place to call home. There is a new chapter to be unfolded and yet to be written. Thank you. This is the last poem I'm going to read, and this poem's titled Sniff Not Growl, and it's all about socialising and the difficulty of socialising, especially in an overstimulating environment, which is basically everywhere. So, the joys of socialising and its bloody difficulties. So this poem is titled Sniff Not Growl. It used to be easy, simply an act. Fast lights, speeding colours, sound slurring into one huge soundscape. But I can swim, no rescue team required. This is all nonsense, but magnificent. Will anyone remember this in the morning? Do a task, stay focused, take more, roll another, anything to get through the next moment. Things are different now. My temptation for the easier route. The cheat sheet is dying. I don't have anything left to give. Conversations overlapping make my ears bleed, my brain squashed from too many sounds. This is all nonsense, but deemed normality? The joke went over my head. Why are they talking so loudly? What's the plan? How long will the sitting and chatting last for? Where is the structure? It is the night time. Aren't we supposed to be in bed? It's time to speak. Interrupted. Retreat to silence. Oh, when is the next cue? Is that person angry? Maybe they're tired. Why aren't we all in bed? Alert! One has been spoken to. A question, yes, I see, an answer, but must compile an answer. Shit, the next part of the sequence. I must return a question? The same question is suitable, but now there is silence. What to do? What to say? How to continue? The ancient pyramids are decaying from mass tourism and climate change. Not relevant. Social echoing, social echo, social echoing, social echo. This is what you said, and this is what you should have said. This is what you've said, and this is what you should have said. This is what you said, and this is what you should have said. This is what you said, and this is what you should have said. Never mind. Another poor attempt. Brain tired, bones ache, time to take myself to bed. Way ahead of the normal routine time, it is getting quite late. I have given what I can. and sure of it's enough. We can only hope it'll have to do. How do they do it, all this socialising? Must remember, we are all different dogs. Sniff, not growl. And thank you. I'm Klaus Funnell, and thank you for listening to my poems, and thank you to Damien and Eat the Storms for having me, and have a good evening. Take care, thank you.
Our next guest was born in the northwest of England but has lived abroad for many years, and this is her second time returning to visit Eat the Storms. Her writing began during the pandemic and has been published in places like The Old Lady Comedy, Dark Winter Lit, Funny Pearls, Tap into Poetry and Lighten Up Online, among others. Alongside our own Eat the Storms, she's also read her poems on the Coalition for Digital Narratives. It's always a delight to welcome back to Eat the Storms, Nuala McEvoy.
Hello, my name is Nuala McEvoy. A couple of years ago, I was living in Spain one summer and found out I was going to have to move to Germany quite quickly, and I looked in my wardrobe and there were quite a few deficiencies there. So this is a poem about shopping in Spain for a winter coat. It's called The Coat for Germany. Buying a winter coat in July is a complicated matter, made worse when hungover, menopausal and shattered. The morning after a girls' night, drinking wine and speaking baloney, I wished to stay in bed, but I couldn't. Oh, if only. I needed a new coat to face the German winter cold, for Deutschland was soon to be my brand new abode. I went into several shops, but my luck was truly out. My search for a winter coat would fail without a doubt. Then I stumbled into a boutique named after a tropical fruit, a shop for the young, the sharp, the zesty, the astute. I hot flushed around the shop, feeling fragile and frail, about to give up hope, until I spotted the bargain rail. For just €25, winter coats, all reduced. I started to rummage, feeling greatly seduced by the idea of getting a coat from this very trendy store, as if by wearing a coat from here, I'd be middle-aged no more. It was muggy in the shop and I was feeling sweaty. With each coat that I found, I felt more like a yeti. But I persevered with my mission and tried on each and every cloak until I was drenched in sweat, well and truly soaked. And then I spotted the perfect style, too good to be true, and there were 3 of them in stock. My optimism grew. Like the story with the bears, one was small, the other tremendous, but the third coat I tried on was perfectly stupendous. Although middle-aged, I felt both stylish and classy, with a pinch of attitude bordering on badass sassy. As I was peeling off my bargain, the telephone rang. My neighbour Sue was calling to generally harangue about my drunken gibberish from the night before, how I scoffed down my wine and a whole lot more. I put down my bargain a second in order to defend my tipsy behaviour to my neighbourly friend. But then along flounced a woman, fake lips and bogus breasts, and she snatched my darling coat, and before I could protest, she had tried it on and was gazing at her perfect reflection, making me starkly aware of my autumnal imperfections. She knew she had done wrong, but didn't really care. She wanted that coat, and all I could do was stare. So then we had a standoff, mariachi Mexican style, but the little hussy defiantly clung to my coat all the while. Despite the summer heat, things turned frostily aggressive. I live in bitter Belgium, she said. Not impressive. I will live in glacial Germany, I aggressively retorted, but all the while on her back my lovely coat she sported. I have lived in Belgium and Germany, she fiercely spat back. Both places are so chilly, I need this winter mac. Whereabouts in Germany? I smilingly hissed. Oh, somewhere in the middle, lied this blatant egoist. The debate turned a notch more aggressive, without the passive, as I told her the coat looked big for her, absolutely massive. But I have boots the same colour, she tried to justify. Come to think of it, I replied, so do I. I am taking this coat, she declared, with slight remorse. But I followed her to the till like a stubborn shire horse. I hovered and I lingered until I saw she had paid, and then slunk back to the rail and tried to self-persuade that I needed a new coat like Rhett Butler's dressing gown, or a Paddington-like duffel to hit the German town, or a Flasher-like trench coat, or a camel-coloured puffer, or a faux leather biker's jacket to make me look tougher. But deep down I knew I'd never find that perfect coat, because shopping for coats in summer is a business that's cutthroat. Revenge by Old Lady Feet by Nuala McEvoy. There was this kid on the bus, right? He was a bit of a fool. He was head to toe dressed in white. He thought he looked dead cool. He worshipped his designer clothes. He loved all his new gear. It was clear that he had to pose. I was rather more austere. A creased skirt and wrinkled top were enough for me to handle, and adding to my fashion flop, a pair of sweaty sandals. His new Nike trainers rested on the opposite seat. It was a no-brainer. He couldn't soil his expensive feet. So I scrambled over his resting limbs to plonk my derriere. By God, that boy, he was so dim he didn't even care. His ears, they were filled with a pair of brand new Beats. He seemed less than thrilled with me on the opposite seat. In fact, he couldn't see me. I was invisible to this thug. I may as well have been a genie on a magical floating rug. I wanted him to see me, to acknowledge my existence, but he just looked quite dreamy and stared into the distance. His feet firmly stayed on the chair right next to me, and although I sternly glared, he simply failed to see. So I looked down at my sweaty shoes and had an excellent idea. This was simply the best ruse to instill horror, repulsion, fear. Slowly, I lifted up my sweaty paws and plonked them next to his seat. He didn't count on that, I'm sure, some middle-aged grubby feet. There was panic as he glanced at my orthopaedic sandals. His fear was enhanced. It was hard for him to handle. Hairy peeping toes, cheap chipped varnish, crusty nails, a bunion half exposed. These feet could tell some tales. A Planterbury tale if these feet could bear their soul. A banterful pilgrimage of treks, jogs and strolls. A lifetime of walking, these feet had done some miles. There was no need for talking. You could see all their trials and their tribulations in their purple, lumpy veins. The bus stopped by the station. The boy could feel the strain. He mumbled an excuse me and stood to leave the bus. His eyes seemed to accuse me, but he couldn't make a fuss. He ran to the exit, this boy so keen to flee. I chuckled as he legged it, laughed so hard I had to pee. I gave a little wave as he frantically fled. It was good to misbehave, a fine line for feet to tread.
And finally, we have another new guest to Eat the Storms. She is here today to share just one poem, but I hope she'll be back again in the future. So I suggest you put your sunglasses and giant sombreros away so as not to scare this guest, whose work has appeared in places like Wildfire Words, Blithe Spirit, Cider Press Review and Rock Paper Poems, alongside visual artist Paul Jackson. She has a Master's in Creative and Life Writing from Goldsmiths College, University of London, and her novel The Cove was published in 2020. Joining us today from rural East Essex, where the landscape inspires her work, and today the inspiration comes from childhood memories, this is Julie-Didcock Williams.
Hi, my name's Julie-Didcock Williams, and the poem I'm going to read today is based on a childhood experience which haunted me for many years and caused great shame for me, but now the whole experience just makes me laugh. I hope you enjoy it. It's called Purple Wraparound Mirrored Sunglasses and a Giant Dark Blue Sombrero. Before the Great Leap, we were late for the last ferry leaving Tossa de Mar. Mum half pushed, half dragged the buggy through hot sand, leaving deep tracks. Boats like sardines on the shore, Spanish captains with little English, cigarettes dangling, dripping ash into the sea, hauled in their anchors. Stop the boat, make it wait. Soft, tan leather billfold, gold clips securing a wad of pesetas, thrust into my hand as I ran from panicked parents, still pushing, still dragging my screaming brother, stomach bridging at his restraining straps. Tourists basted on loungers and towels. My own broiled skin protected by my giant dark blue sombrero. Running like a gladiator, Roman sandals laced up my calves, I alone was responsible for stopping the boat, making it wait. I spoke no Spanish. I was 13, laden with confusing cash. At the shoreline, a mayhem of choices and noise. The gangplank rose, the engine roared, Tossa de Mar receded. Captain shook his head, no. 20, 30, 40 metres from the beach. My family, tiny, indistinguishable mollusks. Arms and legs akimbo, I jumped in all my 80s glory into the bottomless churning sea. The roasted tourists clapped and cheered as, sagging with seawater, I dragged myself onto the sand. After the Great Leap, everyone laughed at my silliness for years. Me in my giant dark blue sombrero. How funny it was. And in my wet clothes, heading back, I sat alone, leaning on the ferry railings. My family reflected in miniature in my purple wraparound mirrored sunglasses.
Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. We've reached the end of another episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B Donnelly. I've been your host and producer, and thank you, the listeners, for tuning in on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, and even iTunes. For full details on all of my guests on today's show, Julie, Nuala, Klaus, Cathy, Richard, Koss, Melanie, Stuart and Morag, you can head on over to eatthestorms.com, click on the podcast section, and there you'll find a blog post for every episode. This was episode 7, season 9, and in that post you can find photos, bios and social media handles, so you can find, follow and be fans of all of my fantastic guests. And of course, while you're there, you can also pick up a copy of The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, which has just been celebrating the launch of its 4th issue. And with that, I am done. I am off for a deserved break. Well, I say break, but I'm actually heading up to County Monaghan to the Tyrone Guthrie Centre, where I'm going to spend 6 days working on my novel, which I have been working on with my mentor, Fiona O'Rourke, and it's been a fantastic journey so far, and I can't wait to get to the end. Yesterday, actually, I was close to Monaghan as I took a trip to see my friend Gaynor Kane, and we went to Belfast. We went into the Ulster Museum because there in the Ulster Museum there is actually a model, a doll's house of the Tyrone Guthrie Centre that was constructed by the wonderful artist Betty Brown. And lo and behold, who happens to be the poet in residence in the doll's house? Only me. It's very interesting to see myself as a puppet. Now, next week we will be back with another special episode. This time we have an episode dedicated to the Dark Angels poets. More about that coming up. So book yourselves in for 5 p.m. next Saturday on your preferred podcast platform. Until then, off you go and busy yourself writing names for those who've been good, those who've been bad, those who get a Christmas card, those who didn't send you one last year so won't be getting one this year. And that's it. Until next time, be wild, be warm, be wonderful, and of course, as always, stay bloody poetic.